I am a very normal, simple 41-year-old guy with zero history of any mental illness apart from a little bit of anxiety, no bad medical history, drug use, etc. Drank in my teens and 20s when I would go out to bars and stuff, but never had any bad habits or anything like that. Anyway, it started when I was 5 or 6, which would have been 1988 to 1989. I would see what I called the bloody man walking up and down the stairs in my house. I can't remember his face. Not sure if it's because I never looked at it, or he didn't have one. I just remember it would never be the middle of the night, but more like bedtime that this would always happen. He had a bandage on his head that was bloody and was wearing a hospital gown. I remember having a feeling that I knew this wasn't right, but I wasn't scared. Not sure if the lack of fear was due to being told not to be scared somehow, or if I was so young, I just didn't know to be scared. Anyway, this person I would see, I would come to learn later in life, was my uncle. He had been beaten in the head with a baseball bat, came home, brain swelled in his sleep, and was taken to the hospital by the family in the morning, where he died several days later. This was August of 1982. I was born in December of 1983. There's much more to the story, both his life and that night itself, but I'll hold off on that for now. I saw the bloody man somewhere in the range of 15 to maybe 30 times. Then my mom and I moved out of there to get our own place. This was my grandfather's house, and I was gone for 5 years. When I was around 12 or 13 years old, I moved back to that house. While I never saw the bloody man again, it was far from the last paranormal encounter I would have in that house. After being back around 5 to 6 months or so, one day I was showing my little sister how to play a Sonic the Hedgehog game. And as I'm explaining it to her, as clear as day, a female voice says her name. My sister instantly got up and went to the door and said, "Ya Ma," and I was frozen solid in fear. This was for 2 reasons. The first was, I knew for a fact that that wasn't my mum's voice that said my sister's name. It was my grandmother's, who had been dead for 10 years. The second thing I knew that my little sister didn't seem to realize was the voice had not come from downstairs. It came from right at our feet by the foot of the bed. I just sat there frozen in fear, while my sister yelled for my mom, who of course said she had been washing dishes and never brought her. My sister then sulked while walking back to the bed. "What's the matter?" I asked her. She said, "I hate those stupid stairs. The bloody man is scary." So I started asking her who had told her about the bloody man. Was it any of my friends, etc., etc. She was in shock that I knew who the bloody man was, and was crying for me to believe her that she really saw him, and none of my friends had spilled the secret to her. She was about 5 at this time, same age I used to see him. The next part of this story involves all my friends. Every sleepover, after hearing my grandmother's voice, my bedroom door started shaking. Thinking it might be my stepfather, we would open it as it was shaking, and no one would be standing there. Upon realizing this, the shaking would terrify us, so every sleepover for about a year, the door would shake, and these horrible claw-like scratching sounds would go down the door. My friends and I would fight to hide in the corner on the bed while it would happen. So, if you're keeping count, that's me and my sister who both saw the bloody man and heard the female voice, and 3 of my friends who witnessed the shaking and clawing at the door. 5 people. But believe it or not, the last part of the story gets even crazier. We sold the house and moved a couple of cities over about a year later. One thing I forgot to mention is that the reason I moved back in December 13 is that my grandfather had a bunch of mini strokes and was in a wheelchair, so my mom moved back in to take care of him. Well, after we moved away, I told my mom it surprised me that she sold her childhood house, and she talked about all the bad memories she had there that had replaced the good. And then she said, plus, Grampy started creeping me out towards the end. It turns out, he had started telling her, "Your brother's still here," every night, up and down those goddamn stairs, up and down, up and down. He saw the bloody man
his son. But that's not the craziest part. About 7 to 8 years after selling the house, the guy that bought it saw my uncle in a gym and beelined it towards him, demanding to know what the hell is in that house. He, his wife, and 2 of his kids kept seeing the uncle around the house.
I made it a point to walk by the house to try to catch someone coming out once I heard the gym story. And one day, I caught the youngest son leaving. I introduced myself and asked him about what they saw, and he said he was too young at the time, but his mum, dad, and 2 brothers would always see my uncle behind them in mirrors in the house. They got rid of the mirrors, and it stopped, he said. I don't quite understand that part, because mirrors had nothing to do with it for me. But still, that's 3 people in my family, 3 friends, and 4 people of a different family that essentially saw the same thing, or heard it. I'd give anything to learn exactly what the heck went on in that house all those years. Anyways, that's my story. My friend, Samuel, took his own life almost 8 years ago. I don't remember his face clearly, but I do remember his eyes, intimidating green eyes, almost the exact color of jade. He died by hanging. For several weeks now, and sporadically, I've been waking up in the middle of the night. Not at a specific time, but always with sleep paralysis. I can't move. I can't speak. I feel a pressure on my chest and neck, like someone is trying to strangle me. At the entrance of my room, he's always there. Samuel, or whatever is pretending to be him, with those green eyes I've never forgotten. They seem to glow in an unnatural way, almost like those small nightlights made for children. Each night, it feels like he gets closer to my bed, and I'm afraid of what might happen if he reaches me. I don't know if it's Samuel, or something pretending to be him. P.S. Sorry if this isn't written very well. I'm translating it into English. Update. I appreciate your recommendations. Some of them have helped me a lot. Regarding the sleep paralysis, I consulted my doctor again about the recent episodes, and he gave me a new treatment. I've also been trying to improve my sleep routine, which has helped, but that thing is still there. 2 nights ago, I managed to move during the paralysis, following some advice I had received. As I moved and got out of bed, that thing was still there. It didn't move at first, but it stared at me with those bright green eyes. A few seconds later, I felt a burning sensation on my arm, like a spider or scorpion bite. Apparently, I passed out after that, because I woke up in the morning in the middle of my room. At first, I thought it was just a bad dream, and that I had fallen out of bed. But then I noticed burns and some scratches on my arm. It wasn't a dream. Yesterday, my mum talked to me. What she said first made me realize it wasn't a hallucination or something my mind had made up like I'd been thinking. The conversation: Mum, have you been sleeping well, or are you still playing during the night? Me: I go to sleep early. I can't stay awake past 9. Mum: then why do you have those dark circles under your eyes? Me: I've been waking up at night. Mom: do you see him too? Me: see who? Mom: a tall man, like a black shadow. Every time I wake up, he's going up the stairs. After she told me that, I told her everything. She called her cousin some kind of witch or healer. I'm not really sure what she is. I told her what had happened, and she emphasized one thing: don't let it reach your bed. She said a prayer and did a few other things I didn't really understand. She gave me a blessed rosary and a sheet with some kind of prayer or chant to ward off spirits. It worked, or at least I want to believe it did. Early this morning, that thing came back. I was paralyzed, but I managed to move after a few minutes by breathing deeply and trying to move my fingers. I had the paper with me and didn't hesitate to read what was on it. That thing let out a scream, like it was burning in hell. It scattered into the darkness, leaving me alone and nearly having a heart attack from the fear. It's clear that thing is no friend of mine, and I just hope it goes away for good. All right, so this happened legitimately 14 hours ago. I'm still shaking while typing. I work night shifts, 3 a.m. to 11 a.m., and live alone in a small town outside Chicago. I'm pretty chill usually. Anyway, last night around 2:45 a.m., I was walking to my car, and the parking lot was empty. There was no wind, and it was dead silent. You could hear the gravel under your shoes, kind of silent. As I'm unlocking my door, I hear this high-pitched whine, like TV static mixed with a dog crying. I turn around and swear on my life. There's this tall-ass figure just standing at the edge of the lot, right by the tree line. I blinked, and it was suddenly like 2 steps closer. Not walking, just closer. I said "nah" out loud and got in my car fast, locked the doors and turned the lights on, and it was gone. I drove out so quickly that I didn't even buckle up until I hit the main road. But here's the real weird part. My dash cam was unplugged when I checked it later. Like, I never touched that thing. It auto-records every drive. The cord was just dangling. No way it came out on its own. Got back home and checked my Ring cam. And bro, at 3:01 a.m., there's footage of me pulling into the driveway, but I'm just sitting in the car for like 4 minutes, not moving, just staring. I don't remember that. I've been feeling off all day, like I'm being watched. My dog won't even go near my car now. He barked at it like it was a whole person inside. Is this sleep deprivation? Is it a glitch in the Matrix? Skinwalker? I don't know, but something ain't right. Has anyone ever seen something that moves closer when you blink? Please tell me I'm not the only one. This story may be short, or it may be drawn out. I am recounting these events as I type, as it was honestly one of the most horrifying things I have experienced, and it brings me genuine stress to think about. This happened maybe 2 to 3 years ago. I live in southern West Virginia, and have for my entire life. The woods and mountains surround every direction you look, and nighttime is a darkness that you can never dream of unless experienced. I was with a friend. I'll call him Mark. Mark was at my house one evening, doing the usual things, watching UFC, playing Xbox, etc. It was extremely late when we finally got bored and decided to go for a walk on a nearby trail to smoke a joint. This is not a particularly long trail, but it is very dense in the woods that surround it, and it is easy to get freaked out when thinking of your surroundings. We finally get to about halfway into the trail, about 30 minutes in, where we stop, pack our joint, and stand on the trail to chill and talk. The forest is very alive tonight. There are always noises in the woods, but the amount of animal activity for the time was unsettling. At this point, it was probably past 1 a.m. This was strange and kind of eerie, but not alerting, as any sort of predatory animal in the area may cause a disturbance. We finish smoking and continue our walk, when almost immediately the forest falls dead quiet. And as soon as the forest goes quiet, there is a voice. It almost sounds like a mocking humanoid voice, shaky and uncertain, almost like an old children's toy, like the ones with the crackly speakers and robotic voice, if you know what I mean. This immediately sets us off. We bolt directly down the opposite length of the trail, but the sound does not gain distance. It doesn't get closer, per se, but no matter how far we ran down the trail, this eerie voice remains the same volume, going over and over with no quieting or stopping. At this point, I am convinced that we are in genuine danger, something I have felt very few times. Finally, after sprinting for who knows how long, we exit the trail, grasping for breath and almost at the verge of tears of how frightening this was. We begin to exit the trail, and about 5 minutes from the exit, there is a bone shaking, heart-stopping, murderous scream from directly behind us. I know what a mountain lion sounds like. This was not an animal. This was not someone playing or watching a movie. This scream sent birds flying from nests and made my heart drop into my stomach. It was the most genuinely depraved and violent scream that I have ever heard. This is a true story that I have only told to maybe 3 people, all of whom seem to brush it off as false. I've never been a person to push for the existence of the paranormal or spiritual, but I genuinely believe I encountered something inhuman in those woods. Edit. I know I will receive questions such as what the voice was possibly saying, or to explain the area and what happened after. I genuinely cannot remember what the voice was saying, if anything intelligible. I don't know if I could understand it then, and I certainly can't recall understanding it after several years of blocking it out of my memory. All that I recall is that it was a fluctuating voice in pitch, shaking, almost just joining sounds together. After running from the scream at the end of the trail, we ran to the car, which was only about 5 more minutes from the trail, so we got there relatively fast from sprinting. So my girlfriend and her friends invited me to stay at a small cabin, Airbnb, in the Appalachian Mountains near Seven Devils. The idea was just to go up there to enjoy some snow tubing and then some light drinking, hot tub, and board games in the cabin afterwards. So the cabin was pretty high up in the mountain, and the drive up to it was kinda scary. Single car length road for the most part, no railings on the side of the road, so if you were on the side of the truck, which we'd rented a 4-wheel drive to make the drive up, thank goodness, it was a sheer drop on that side. Sure, if we drove off the road, we'd likely be stopped by some trees on the way down, but still a bit nerve-wracking. Another thing was, some of the trees on the trail had faces on them for decoration. I think they were supposed to look cute, but they just looked kinda unnerving for most of us. I really should have taken pictures, but was too anxious during the climb. The cabin itself was almost at the top of the mountain and fairly small. A small living room with a very tiny and narrow kitchen and 2 bedrooms. Hot tub on the lower porch, because the cabin itself was basically on the 2nd floor, so you had to go up a stairway to get into it. Key to the cabin was in a lockbox, so no special door lock option, just an old-fashioned cabin. We came back after snow tubing and dinner. The others drank enough to get buzzed, whilst I only had a glass of wine since I have a condition that makes it dangerous to get too much alcohol in my system, so relatively sober. Enjoyed the hot tub as planned, witnessed a beautiful shooting star, then played board games after that until around 1 a.m, and we all went to bed. I woke up a little after 4 a.m. because I was suddenly sweating, and then I felt kinda unsettled. Decided I needed to go to the bathroom, so I got up. I left the bedroom, and nothing seemed amiss, so I used the bathroom. When I left the bathroom, the front door was wide open. Naturally, I felt immediately uneasy. But again, this was a small cabin, so there was nowhere for any intruder to hide. I could easily see the entire interior of the cabin from the tiny hallway. I decided maybe the last person through the door last night after the hot tub didn't fully close the door and lock it appropriately, because there is a sign by the door that says "close door firmly," and it was fairly windy outside. I mean, that wind was howling out there. So I go over to the door and close it, making sure that it's firmly enough in the doorway to fully lock it. I even jiggle the handle a few times and try to see if it'll open when locked. It doesn't budge, so I start to head back to the room. Then I hear the door rattle a little bit, and I turn around and stare at it. I watch the lock itself turn, and then the door opens, and it doesn't slam open from the wind. It just slowly swung open. I stayed extremely still, because of course that was crazy. The door has a huge clear window on it, with no curtains, and a big window beside it that also doesn't have curtains, and there was absolutely no one on the other side of it. There's no way someone could have ducked out of view either, and hurried away from the door after pushing it open either, because they would have had to make a lot of noise hurrying down the steps to get off the walkway. Like I said, it was an old-fashioned door as well, with a simple lock and knob, no electronic buttons or anything to unlock or lock by buttons or remotely. After getting the nerve to close the door again and locking it firmly, nothing else happened that night. I couldn't really go back to sleep because I was just too scared to do so. The following morning, I told the others about it, and they were pretty spooked too, but otherwise glad we were only staying that one night. Before we packed up the truck to leave, there was this strange knocking noise coming from the surrounding woods. Not like someone knocking on a wall or door. It was a deep, hollow-sounding knock that only knocked twice, stopped for a while, and then would do it again. Maybe it was just trees knocking together, but after what happened early in the morning like that, it was a little unsettling. So yeah, I'm from Florida, and though I've experienced other paranormal activity before, that was the most physical thing I've experienced before, and I've definitely heard plenty of stories about odd occurrences in the Appalachians. In a way, I'm glad I experienced something, but I'll never forget the fear I felt. After all, my first thought was an intruder or something, and it would have been pretty bad being up there so high by ourselves. If we'd had any reason to run, we could have easily fallen off a cliff or something in the pitch-black darkness outside. Background. From 1993 to 1998, every summer I attended a Christian youth camp for girls. Camp lasted 4 days, 3 nights. There were about 200 girls at the camp, and it was about a 1.5 to 2 hour drive away from our homes. Some of the camping areas were tent only, others had A-frames, and at least one of the camping areas had longhouses. The campground is called Ensign Ranch, Kittitas County, Washington. You can look online to see pictures of what these different camping areas look like. It's a really safe campground, and we had a lot of fun every year. In the evenings, we would tell spooky stories, pretty typical stuff for youth camps. Apologies for the long post. I want the details to be clear. On the last night of camp in 1996, I was 15 at the time, there were several of us girls on the top level of our longhouse. It was past bedtime, so we were quietly telling scary stories. I had told a couple, one with the help of a friend. I'll call her Lily. I don't remember the specific stories from that night, just typical, and the hook was hanging from the car door stuff. After a couple hours of spooky stories, someone else was talking, and I was getting really tired and could hardly keep my eyes open. Then some of the girls asked me to tell one more story, so I start telling a story, making it up as I go, just typical on a dark night, in the woods not far from here. Type of beginning. Next thing I know, I wake up, lying flat on my back. As I'm waking, I realize I'm still talking, but once I became aware of my own talking, I couldn't remember what I was saying or trying to say. I was fully awake then. I finished by lamely saying something like, "They all died. The end." I looked around me at the girls, who were all staring wide-eyed at me. A couple of the girls were quietly crying, mouths open in horror with tears streaming down their faces. My friend Lily whispered, "That was the creepiest thing I've ever heard." The girls that weren't crying nodded in agreement. I said I was tired and we should all go to bed. As all of the other girls moved away to their sleeping bags, I asked Lily and another girl, I'll call her Sarah, what I had said. I admitted to them that I had fallen asleep and couldn't remember anything. Lily and Sarah exchanged glances, and Lily paused before saying, "That just makes it worse." Sarah nodded in agreement and said she didn't want to retell it because it was that creepy. Now, at this point, if it had been just Lily and one or two of the other girls that were in that group, I would have thought they had realized I was asleep and were just messing with me. But Sarah was, and still is, a very serious person who doesn't have much of a sense of humor, doesn't like pranks, even innocent ones, and is honest, almost to a fault. So I went to sleep feeling unnerved, but exhausted. A few hours later, I was being shaken awake by one of the adult camp leaders. She told me to gather my things and follow her. I sleepily and awkwardly carried my stuff down the ladder, then followed her outside. 2 other camp leaders were standing next to a tent. They told me to put my items inside and then come talk to them. Inside the tent were 2 of the younger girls, 12 or 13, that had been listening to the scary stories and who had been crying when I woke up. They wouldn't look at me, just laid there sobbing. When I went back outside to talk to the leaders, they said Lily had showed up at their tent with the 2 sobbing girls. The girls were crying and kept saying they wanted their parents to come get them. Lily explained about the scary stories and about mine being the one that made them cry. The leaders asked me what I had said. I admitted I had fallen asleep and honestly didn't know. The leaders said Lily refused to tell them what I said, and the 2 girls just sobbed harder the more they tried to talk to them. They explained to the girls that they weren't going to call and wake their parents at 3 a.m. and have them drive over an hour just because of spooky stories. Plus, we were all going home the next day. As punishment for scaring the girls, the leaders made me sleep in the tent with them, while the leaders went to sleep in the longhouse. The girls cried for a bit, and then we all fell asleep. They were both gone from the tent when I awoke in the morning. To this day, I have no idea what creepy story I told. No one that was there has ever been willing to tell me any of the details. Several years afterward, Lily told me that she would randomly have nightmares because of it. The only details I ever had answered were, my voice sounded the same as usual. My eyes remained closed for the majority of the story, which creeped them out more. And the story was coherent and made sense up until the end, when I lamely finished speaking. Again, if it had only been Lily and a few of the other less serious girls, I would know they were just screwing with me. But Sarah and most of the other girls that were there, including one that cried most of the night, even being a part of a prank on me, just doesn't seem probable.
Please show your support by subscribe to our YouTube channel and like the video. This really helps us a lot. I upload daily horror stories, so make sure to press the bell icon